Backseas Musical Podcast.
For more than 25 years, we've been trying to speak to Ann and Nancy Wilson of Heart on the Bax and O'Brien Show in Springfield. Unfortunately, there had been an incident, and I'd rather not get into the details, but since then, the Wilson sisters have refused to come on the show, for good reason. Somehow, after much wrangling and negotiation, I was able to get Nancy Wilson to forgive and forget. And as it turns out, Nancy could not have been nicer, which says to me that she's either let bygones be bygones or she has a new solo record coming out. Or maybe it's a little bit of both. Either way, Nancy Wilson was an absolute joy to talk to. And it seemed like she felt the very same way about me. At least that's the lie that I'm going to tell myself and everybody I know. But before I get into the interview, let me just point out that over the last 50 years, Ann and Nancy Wilson have released 16 studio albums which have sold over 35 million copies around the world. They are one of the very few artists that have been able to rack up top 10 hits in 5 different decades. And in spite of all their successes over the years, Nancy Wilson is about to release her very first solo record, which is scheduled to be released in March of next year. Her first single has already been released, an excellent cover version of the Bruce Springsteen song, The Rising. And it's really, really good. This is my conversation with Nancy Wilson of Heart on Backseas Musical Podcast.
Hi. Hello.
Mike Baxendale in Springfield. How are you?
Really good.
Yeah?
Really good.
Well,
how's it going over there?
It is. We're doing okay. Hanging in like everybody else.
Right.
Hey, I want to first of all congratulate you on a couple of things. First, your first solo record is coming out early next year. One, I get 2 questions. One, I thought that already happened already. So what took you so long? And the second question is, does your sister know about this?
Oh, I'm pretty sure she knows about it. I mean, she's not going to stand in my way, obviously, but it took me a while because we've been working so hard with Heart for all these years. And I did do a live album once called Live at McCabe's Guitar Shop. But this was the first studio album I've ever done on my own. And people have always said, when are you going to do that? And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm so busy with Heart.
But it is kind of a weird undertaking. I mean, you've been in this band for forever, and then all of a sudden someone's saying, "Hey, why don't you do something on your own?" I would have imagined that has to feel, I don't know, a little either exciting and uncomfortable at the same time. Like all of a sudden everything is on you.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's it's kind of a responsibility that I want to put on myself to be the singer for all the songs, and a lot more new songwriting and collaborating with some folks. But it's just really gratifying. I've been having a blast doing it. Just moved up to Northern California kind of recently, and away from LA, and there's this really nice music space here, and I've got all these great guitars and good microphones and amplifiers, to play with, and so it's just been really rewarding. And of course, being in lockdown, has a lot to do with it too. There's no touring right now per se. I mean, although it's looking pretty hopeful for next year. But yeah, so it's just a really good time to, buckle down and get really creative and have fun with music.
I was listening to the first single, the cover of The Rising from Bruce Springsteen. It's really, really good, but it's actually a really interesting choice. I don't know how much the lockdown and COVID may have played a part in choosing that song, but was there a particular reason for choosing that one?
Well, I kind of got a chance to go see Bruce on Springsteen on Broadway when he was, doing that little theater thing, and seeing a lot of his songs. I've always loved Bruce, but seeing him do those songs in that particular way where there was no production surrounding it, it was just the naked songs with good words and really great songs. So I kind of vowed to myself, I want to do one of these great songs, and The Rising, was written for 9/11, and
Right.
so I thought it was really appropriate for the times we're in now, which in many ways is really worse than 9/11. And you know, there's so many souls kind of leaving the planet, and it's kind of an aspirational song because it kind of speaks to the human family, you know, and the loss that we're all kind of undergoing. So, and also the fact that when a female voice sings a song like that, it brings a whole different interpretation to it, and I thought that was really cool about it. It's aspiring, you know. It's not a dark song, as it turns out. It sounds a lot more inspiring and aspirational.
It's different, but it's you know, at the same time, it's a pretty earnest version of, I think, what he was trying to get to also. So in many ways,
Yeah.
the honesty of his interpretation of it is similar, but I think you're right. I think there's definitely a different feel about that song, and in light of everything that's going on, I thought that was a really cool choice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really liked how it turned out. And the next single is coming right along too. It's an original that should be out like maybe a couple of weeks. I'm hoping.
And the full album is out by March.
Yeah, I think February or March is when the rest of the album can be dropped, as they say.
Now, do you have a title for it yet, or is that still you're still trying to figure that out?
Yeah, I do. There's a song on it called "You and Me," and turns out that's the title song
it.
for the album now. And it's a song me and a longtime collaborator, Sue Ennis, that wrote a lot of the heart stuff with us, put together. It's kind of a collaboration between a couple of songs we both had started, and then turned into one song, like a hybrid of two different songs that turned into one song that was a mama song that I had written, and she'd written one for her mom. And so when we put it together, it turned into one real cool song.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, not last summer, obviously, but the summer before, Heart played in Hartford, and it had to be maybe the hottest night we've had in 15 years. It was about 175 degrees outside, and we were out there at the Xfinity Theater, and we saw you guys. And I don't think I've seen Heart in maybe 30 years. So my recollection of the first time I had seen the band was a pretty positive one. I think I saw you in Wisconsin many years ago. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a good show, and it's like I said, it's 175,000 degrees. It's about the heat of the sun, and I was blown away by two things. First of all, I was surprised that the two of you didn't melt, that it wasn't just two puddles with guitars on it by the end of the show. But the other thing that was the most remarkable to me is that Ann's voice. You know, while, you know, some people who get to a certain age, the voice doesn't necessarily hold up, or it gets tired, or, you know, there's a breakdown there. That was absolutely not the case with her voice. It almost it's from where we were sitting sounded as good, if not better, than it had ever been. And I was so impressed.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Oh, that's great. No, her voice is really a gift. I mean, she's always been so gifted as a singer. She's born to sing, you know, and she's got that amazing tonality that I say, too, is better, more recently better than earlier, you know, singing that she did on some of the earliest albums, because I think she's kind of mellowed in a really great interpretive sort of way as a singer, and tells a really damn good story, you know, when she sings.
Well, I mean, I've always believed this, and I've talked to other singers who kind of confirm it. It's kind of like, you know, when you're a world-class athlete, you take care of your, you know, your muscles and your body. The voice isn't that much different. You know, if a guitar goes out of tune, you change the strings, you work on the tuning. But when the voice goes, you know, that's sometimes really hard to recover. And I don't want to, you know, point fingers at, you know, guys who can't do it anymore, but, you know, like, you know, there are a few of them out there that really struggle because of the damage that the body takes with singing to that extent.
No, that's really true. I mean, one of one of my favorite, things to remember about singing is it's only skin. It's skin. So you have to really take care of it. Life can be tough on you as it is without, putting extra punishment on your skin. So she's always been really conscientious as a singer. We do all kinds of warm-ups, and we take, this special vitamin C that you can take megadoses without hurting your stomach, and, and keeping it warm, and, you just do all kinds of tricks to warm it up. And so you're not just out there, screeching.
Well, it's funny. A few weeks ago, I had an interview with Rob Halford from Judas Priest, and
Oh, wow.
he does nothing to prepare. He does no warm ups. He just goes out and he belts it out.
Well,
Now he'll tell you that his voice has changed over the years, but but what he's doing is he's able to accommodate his voice in a way where he's not taxing it, but yet he's not missing out on notes or timbre or anything like that. Again, another freak of nature, but that's everyone does it differently.
yeah, that's true. I mean, when we were out with Cheap Trick a few times, and Robin Zander has
Yeah.
one of the best voices on the planet, and he'll walk up and down the halls backstage, and singing opera, and he really warms up and he really takes care of it. And then he's just one of the best singers. He can scream while he sings, and he doesn't hurt it.
Right.
So in his case, it's really different again. Everybody has their own methods.
The night we saw you guys in Hartford, you played a bunch of cover songs. I mean, I know we're kind of talking a little bit about covers here because you're talking about the Rising and everything. But you did, I think it was 3 covers that night. I think you did Yes, a Pink Floyd song, and if I'm not mistaken, it was The Boxer from
Yeah.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Right.
And then
Right.
and I was with some friends, at that show, and somebody reminded me, and I had completely forgotten that this was true. 2 of your biggest hits were also cover songs, and people may not even remember that What About Love and Alone are both covers, and I had completely forgot about that.
Right. Those were written by other songwriters. In the middle of the 80s, that's what everybody was doing at the time, like guys like Aerosmith, and, everybody was covering LA's stable songwriters material. And, we made it our own, of course. And today it feels like we wrote them, we made it our own, and we kind of are responsible for delivering that particular signature sound to that song. But yeah, it's those are great songs. They live well.
Yeah. What About Love was I believe it was the band Toronto, and Alone was written by a band called I-10, which I completely forgot about that band. But how do you get introduced to those songs? I mean, are those songs that you knew, or were they songs that were presented to you by either a record company or a producer?
Yeah, those songs were presented to us by our producer. He came over to Anne's house one time with a case full of cassette tapes and probably a couple of CDs in there, and we got a boom box and sat around cross-legged on the floor in the living room, and we just ran songs and listened to songs, and it's like, no, throw that in the round file, and interestingly, the first number one single we ever had was These Dreams, which I heard last that same day, and he's like, well, this one is just an interesting, pretty song, but it would never work for Heart. And I was like, let me hear that. And I fell so head over heels in love with that song, especially too since Bernie Taupin, who writes with Elton,
Right,
had written the lyrics, and they're really cool, really interesting and melodic, and just a really great song. And I said, I need to sing this song. This one's for me. Anne never gets to sing that one because it's for me.
that's yours.
And so, they're like, no, I don't think that's going to ever work out. And the record the management company was like, no, that's not a heart song. It's like, just let me try it. And so we worked up the demo for it. And I was singing the mock vocal, and I had a cold at the time. And so there was that raspy thing that happened. And it's like, that sounded cool. Let's keep that part, So it all kind of came around the bend in a really haphazard kind of way, but it was our first number one song.
It's funny how record companies sometimes seem to know the very least about music.
Yeah, the saying is they've got their ears painted on,
and take them off when it's necessary.
Yeah.
I read this really interesting. I read this really interesting interview that you'd done recently, and someone was asking about your support of other musicians, especially in Seattle, and there was a story about Mother Love Bone, who had gone through a real tough loss, losing their lead singer Andy Wood, and how you guys really took care of this band and some of the remaining members of this band, and really helped them out, and then eventually they became one of the biggest bands in the world in Pearl Jam. Tell me a little bit about that story.
Yeah. Well, they, as Mother Love Bone, they had a record deal put together, and their manager, Kelly Curtis, is one of my all-time best friends since he was like 10. We're still really best friends. And they lost Andrew Woods, the singer, to an overdose. And their whole record deal fell through, and everything fell through for them in their life. And the tour that they were going to do fell through, and so they came. We were recording an album in New York one time, and they came through town and came to visit us in our hotel and asked if they could borrow enough money just to get by, just to get by for a few months. And so we said yes, and we wrote them a big fat check and just said, here's an IOU, just whenever you can do it. And, and they were good for it, because then they found Eddie Vedder, and they put that band together, and it was really amazing, of course, and still is. And they paid us back later.
So if I asked you for a big fat check, well, I'm going to assume the answer probably wouldn't be the same one. I'm just guessing.
Well, of course I would lend you money.
Of course you would. Yes, sure you would. But don't worry. I'm not gonna hold you to the whole amount. Half of it would be good. There was, as I'm prepping for this interview, I watched the video of you and Ann at the Kennedy Center Honors in 2007. Man, I watched that. You guys singing "Stairway to Heaven," and the camera keeps panning up to Robert Plant, and the guy has got tears in his eyes for a song that even he will admit he's so tired of hearing and so tired of singing. But to hear someone, to hear a band play it, and play it with such, integrity and honesty, it was hard not to be moved by that. Could you, from your vantage point on stage, could you see how much they were responding to your performance?
No, we couldn't see pretty much anything, only the first few rows, in the audience. But we knew they were up there. And, it was like one of those situations where we were offered the opportunity to do this. And we said, of course we'll do this. And we were already on the road. We didn't, we had to, fly private to D.C. from like somewhere in Florida that we were playing the day before. And we had one rehearsal only. And so we had to really, focus ourselves and take a really deep breath before we walked out there. And we couldn't really see until it was cut together later, the edited version of the show later, right, which I think was quite a few weeks later. And it was like, oh my God, that was happening while we did that. And, I think one of the reasons they they did seem kind of emotional too was that Jason Bonham, the son of their late drummer John Bonham, was on the drums there, and he'd grown up as a kid around
Right.
Zeppelin and all of their rehearsals and all their writing places and times and places with them. So they're uncles, kind of, Uncle Zeppelins.
But you only rehearsed that one time before going on stage?
Yeah, we had one rehearsal with the existing performers, and the choir and the band that was playing it. So, because we had we had one night off, and so we raced over there, had one rehearsal, and then the next night, I played it in the hotel myself, but I rehearsed it myself.
I mean, how many bands in the last 40, 50 years have tried to play that song, played it 1,000 times, and still don't get it right? And you guys knock it out of the park after only one rehearsal. That's remarkable.
Well, we kind of grew up around that song. I mean, lots of living rooms, played it a lot of times in a lot of different situations. And somebody paid me, Mike McCready, actually, from Pearl Jam, one time said, "I'll give you $20 if you can play Stairway to Heaven on your acoustic." And I got the $20.
and that's how they paid you back?
Yeah.
In $20 increments?
It's $20, you mother. No.
So, so I would be kind of missing the opportunity. Ann has also got some new music out as well. Is that right?
I've heard one thing, yeah, that sounded good to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something with Steve Earle, right?
Yeah, Steve Earle cover. I think it's Revolution Is Now.
Yeah.
It's a good rocker.
It is, but it's nothing as good as yours. I mean, and
Oh.
I'm saying that
Wow,
not just
thank
because I have you on the phone, but that does help a lot. So,
Well, The Rising is one of those songs. I mean, I can't claim to have written it, obviously, but it just speaks volumes to me, especially in the time we're in right now with all the, like we said before, there's so much loss going on, and it speaks to the spirit,
Right. Well, yeah, and the thing is, I mean, for anyone who says, well, it's just a cover, The Rising is a great song, but there is a whole audience out there that has never heard that song, and then to get reintroduced to it in a way that is just as powerful, if not as powerful as the original, you make it your own, regardless of who writes it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I just feel like, it's sort of serendipity the way a lot of stuff came together for me right now. There's definitely a blessing in the greater curse going on around here.
Mm. After this whole COVID situation is over, do you expect that you and Ann are going to get back on the road and start recording again, or are you going to see how far you can get with your solo stuff?
I don't have a lot of expectation on the solo stuff, but I hope it gets heard. I hope people enjoy hearing it, and it means something to somebody. But if nothing happens with it, I'm just fine having just done it, because it's just really fun and rewarding, and I feel completed with doing music right now. And there's an offer on the table for Heart to go out next year, and things are looking pretty promising as far as now with a couple of different vaccines and stuff like that. So yeah, I think, we'd be fools not to take the offer. But I don't know how Ann is doing or feeling about any of that right now either. So we'll see. I'm hopeful for that.
Well, the new album is due in March. It's called You and Me. Did I get that right? You and Me?
You and Me.
You and
That's
Me.
Right.
It sounds terrific. Nancy Wilson, it's a real pleasure to talk to you.
Great to talk to you. Obviously, yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks so much. Take care.
Okay, this is what I think happened. Nancy Wilson has no recollection of the incident that we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. Just happens to be a wicked nice person who also happens to have a record coming out in March. Either way, thanks for listening. You can reach me at baxatrock102.com. Check out the updates on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you enjoyed listening to Baxy's Musical Podcast.